Fred Upton was one of the handful of people in the House who voted to impeach Trump. And also, recently, he voted to censure everybody's favorite tinfoil hat Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's really all over the headlines earlier this month. But let me tell you, I'll read the story and then I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, that kind of analysis. This is from M Live. It's written by Brad Devereaux, published yesterday. Really, Upton claps back to Cass County GOP, which censured congressman over vote to remove committee member, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene. U.S. Representative Fred Upton from St. Joseph has responded to the Cass County Republican Party censuring him for voting to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene from a House committee, posting a thread on Twitter to reiterate the reason for the vote. Upton posted a statement on Twitter late in the evening on February 23rd after the Cass County Republican Party's executive committee approved a resolution censuring Upton because of his vote to remove the Congresswoman from Georgia from the U.S. House Committee on Education and Labor. The GOP resolution states Greene's comments have not been out of line with anyone else's comments, calling Upton's vote to support her removal from the committee a betrayal of his oath of office and core values of the Cass County Republican Party. Now, I could stop there and just talk about how ridiculous that is, but Upton actually beats me to it. He starts his tweet by saying, really? Kind of like indignantly. This is what Upton wrote. She taunted a Parkland school shooting survivor, argued that California wildfires were started by a Jewish space laser, accused Democratic politicians of running a pedophile ring out of a pizza parlor, and questioned whether 9/11 really happened, Upton said on Twitter. Does the Cass GOP really think someone like that represents Republican values and should be serving on the Education Committee? I served on that committee and met with Columbine school shooting survivors. I have since met with Parkland and Sandy Hook school shooting survivors and heard all of their personal stories. She should not be on the Education Committee, and Congress is right to remove her, period. Cass County Republican Party, they responded with a statement. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is being attacked and treated differently than others that represent us in Washington, D.C. because she's unafraid to speak out, and her comments have not been out of line with anyone else's comments. She's canceled. She's being canceled. Oh, God. This type of treatment is dangerous for all of us and strips away our First Amendment rights. Well, let's go back to a common peccadillo. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequences. When you are saying horrible, reprehensible, crazy stuff, you're going to have consequences. There's no such thing as cancel culture. It's consequence culture. It's like, the lady got fired from The Mandalorian. It's like, she didn't get fired because we want to muzzle her speech. She got fired because she was a bigot. She was saying transphobic garbage on her Twitter. Turns out that a neoliberal corporation such as Disney, they crunch the numbers, and it turns out that is a financial liability. Okay, I'm being blasé, but I will say there were probably a lot of workers at Disney who were speaking out against that too. So you know what? I shouldn't be so cynical and blasé about that. Let's break down a couple of the important points here, though. It's this interesting thing that Republicans do, and Cass County is doing this right here, where it's this nonsensical deflection. They are completely deflecting from the actual content of what Marjorie Taylor Greene said, and are basically just positing this argument that Fred Upton is somehow stamping on her First Amendment rights by bringing forth consequences for her bat-ass crazy and bigoted speech. We all kind of joke about the Jewish space laser thing, but it is very scary that we have somebody in Congress who, and this is a very old thing. I'm not going to go into a whole lecture about blood libel and stuff, but the idea of Jewish people running the world, having access to technology or partaking in evil conspiracies, has a very, very long and very, very dark history. And it is very troubling to see modern American politicians echoing those points. Now, Fred Upton isn't innocent. I do want to bring that up too. It, his complicity with the Trump administration over the years, again, he just bailed out at the last possible second. Now, you could give him some kudos for being like brave enough to stand up at the very end, but again, I'm a materialist. All of this stuff has been built up over time, and Fred Upton was right in the middle of it. Fred Upton has been a congressman here literally since I was born. He has seen the transformation of the Republican Party from this kind of corporate neoliberal, but otherwise not necessarily fascistic party, to a fascistic conspiracy theory party. And much like Cass County is like plugging their ears, ignoring the content of what Marjorie Taylor Greene actually said, Fred Upton is ignoring the content of his own party. He asked the questions, do these represent Republican values? Well, in 2021, they kind of do. That's what happens when you have this. We are in this state of like late stage capitalism and mass alienation, not unlike the national mood and economic situation of Germany before Adolf Hitler took over. And it is following down along of those same pathways. And in that sense, I really feel like people like Fred Upton are playing this very dangerous game where they will condemn the most outwardly toxic elements of the movement he's a part of, without again talking about where does this come from? Where are the roots of this? It's because your colleagues over the last several decades have just been making the waters around them more and more toxic, more and more despicable, to the point where, last summer, we had just, a lot of these Republican supporters, and like mainstream ones too, think that there are pedophile cabals, think that Antifa is controlled by George Soros, are put into this propagandized defensive position where they think they have like a moral compulsion to murder liberals and leftists, although they don't really know what leftists are. They confuse them with the liberals. That's a whole other thing, I suppose. But I think that is the state of affairs. Cass County, in a lot of ways, does represent the modern Republican Party more than Fred Upton does, who is essentially trying to have his cake and eat it too. And there are models for these politicians who, again, I don't ideologically agree with like libertarians and stuff. It's like, I gotta remind you, it's been capitalism the whole time. Like, you remove the old man's mask, that it was old man capitalism. I don't know this corporatism guy you're talking about. But anyway, think of like Justin Amash. Again, I don't agree with him politically, but he actually had some, I don't know if you call it morals or principles, but when the party got too fascistic and crazy for him, he left. He didn't do this like kind of mealy mouth thing where he's rejecting, Fred here is rejecting some of the most toxic and debased elements of the party while ignoring all the circumstances that brought them about. And this man should know. This is a guy who has recently become more conservative over the years himself. There's a great excerpt about him in the book by Jane Meyer, Dark Money. He used to be more of like one of those ecologically friendly conservatives. They threatened to primary him with like Tea Party money, and he suddenly became a climate change denier. Where were Fred Upton's principles then? Because fascism is bad. Climate apocalypse is also significantly bad. The extinction of the human race and all that. So, it is good that Fred Upton made a statement, stood up for common sense or whatnot, but I think it is almost naive for him to say like, oh, Are these really Republican principles? Yeah. And you let this happen. You let decades of Fox News and right wing radio jockeys lead people down these very, very dark rabbit holes. And you really didn't say anything while it was happening. All right. I'm going to take a quick little sip of my coffee here. So that about ends kind of like the local coverage for today. I'm going to take just a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to start in on some national stories. Y'all are listening to the Hood Rat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Hello, everyone. We are back. This is Hood Rat Strategist radio program. Um, you know, one final thought, just last topic. I wrote about this on the Facebook page the other day, and it reminds me a little bit about like I was just talking about like kind of the toxic nature of like modern Republican politics and such. Last week I was interviewing Christine Babcock. I offhandedly mentioned like growing up in a militia adjacent household. And I think it's interesting because it ties in to what I was just talking about, where you know, so when I mentioned that, like, so my old man is a lifetime NRA member. He is very avid gun collector, kind of single issue voter on gun control and stuff. Raised me with three values. Always stick to your word. Um, Prepare yourself and your community for emergencies and disasters, and don't trust the U.S. government. So logically, 30 some years later, I'm a socialist. Of course, a lot of people in the militia bubbles, the same bubbles I grew up in, came to some very different and disturbing conclusions. But I think I don't like to leave those topics on such a dour and sour note. It is worth mentioning. There is like a through line, and there is a way that you can kind of talk to your neighbors and deprogram them. And for us in Michigan, that doesn't mean a lot of people who are militia adjacent. These people, they understand something is wrong. They've just been fed the absolute wrong conclusions. It's best to try to engage these folks when you can in some dialogue to explain things. And you might not like change their entire worldview overnight, but big part of what political education is about is planting seeds. Seeds of doubt, seeds of questioning. Hopefully, can pull some people back from the brink of this kind of conspiracy-fueled violence and terrorism that we've seen over recent months.